On this week's episode of the Geek State, Animal Crossing New Horizons is bringing new and exciting ways to do chores for strange animal creatures.
If we speak it, they will come. What leak did we conjure this time?
Josh and Jay from the Superhero Suite podcast join us to talk about the Batman and the state of superheroes in media. All that, plus our new James Plays segment and more.
Here's the true story.
Four friends pick to live in a video game.
And find out what happens when they stop being themselves.
And start being someone else.
Animal Crossing
for Nintendo GameCube.
I just been fishing, seeing some pals.
All Rob does is fish and see his pals. I'm the one getting the job, tending the
Welcome to Animal Crossing, the live game that's happening every minute of every day, whether you're playing or not.
Stand by alert.
This is it!
Thank you, but your podcast is in another castle. This is the Geek State.
Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of The Geek State, the podcast about all the cool stuff going on in the world of geek. Got a great show for you this time. My name is Chris, and joining me as always, my buddy James. James, you ready for some... we got a lot of video game stuff this week. I'm kind of excited.
It is exciting. You're my co-op partner for this lovely episode. I've
got my quarters all lined up on top of the arcade. We're ready to rock, ready to do this.
Yeah.
So last time on the show we talked about keeping you accountable with all your games that kind of have piled up. So we'll be checking in with you on that. We've got some guests coming on, the folks behind Superhero Suite on the Retro Zap Network. They're going to be in, and we're going to talk a little bit about Batman and their podcast, because recently, not too long ago, in the internet world, it seems like forever ago, but Matt Reeves is constantly kind of doing that little drip of Batman stuff. A few weeks back, we got the first look at the costume itself. There'd been some leaks from the set of the Batman stunt double. It's clearly not Robert in the suit, and in those pictures of him riding like a motorcycle. But this is our first look at the Batmobile. And since James, you won't be with us to talk to Josh and Jay, I was just curious if you had a chance to see the Batmobile reveal from
I saw a couple pictures. I didn't dig deep into it, and if I remember correctly, but if I saw correctly, it almost looks like the hood of an old Thunderbird.
Yeah, a little bit. It's retro.
It's like a really cool kind of it's almost like your neighborhood Batman, He's
your friendly neighborhood Batman, He's
retrofitted the Thunderbird to stop some crime.
Do we go to the shop and we see Vin Diesel and The Rock doing work on the Batmobile?
Just living life 1/4 mile at a time.
It does look like that. The first shot of it I saw, I was kind of like, okay, well, that's a different take of the Batmobile. But then, of course, when the back has the kind of the fins, and it has the the rocket engine on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, that's the Batmobile. You gotta have that. I feel like if you take any components, if you had to make a list of things that the Batmobile must be, it's gotta have that rocket engine in the back. I feel like it can be anything it wants to be, as long as it has that.
I'm looking at it now. It's almost like the DeLorean from Back to the Future and the Batmobile had a love child, and that's what we're getting.
I love it. And it's so different. And that's the thing. Batman fans are so quick to be like, we want something new and something different. And then, definitely not something that's just, and then it's different. It's like, oh, but it's not like the Tumbler, it's like,
right.
Us fans, we're the absolute worst. So I'm looking forward to get some real superhero expertise on this Batmobile from Josh and Jay from the Superhero Suite podcast a little bit later on in the show. But like I said, we got some video game stuff that I'm pretty pumped to talk about. So let's get right to it in the news.
Well, Chris, we talked about it last week a little bit, and we said, or I said at least, that there had to have been something going on for Star Wars in the works, and it does appear that because we talked about it, it is coming to fruition. A listing for a Star Wars game codenamed, quote, Project Maverick has leaked on the PlayStation Network. The source of the leak is a listing on the back end of the European PlayStation Network that teases the unannounced game with an image of a squadron of X-Wings zooming towards an Imperial Star Destroyer. The leaked listing was first posted on Twitter and Reddit. While there has previously been no mention of Project Maverick at EA, we have heard that there are at least 2 Star Wars games currently in the works for the publisher. Right. You have Kotaku reported in February that Respawn is already working on a sequel to Jedi Fallen Order Church after the success of the first action-adventure title. While
they're working on something that's
Motive is working on a smaller, more unusual project. And the question out there right now is Motive's current project, is it Project Maverick? Kotaku has confirmed that this is in fact the case, but did not share any additional details about the game. Yeah. The teaser image has led to some to speculate the new title, and is a spiritual successor to Rogue Squadron. Space combat series. So this is great. We're very excited. EA Motive, the only game they have under their belt since becoming EA Motive is Battlefront 2. Space combat in Battlefront 2 was quite good in my opinion. So if they are making a Rogue Squadron game, I am for it. The VR X-Wing experience was awesome. So maybe you'll get some VR. I'm very excited about this.
So I do have some more updates on this because a secondary story came out not too long before recording. And it kind of is a little bit more of a data mine of some of that information that was available on the back end. Unfortunately, James, at least for the beta, the thing that is currently listed on this server is what the whatever tag is basically saying, like, this is a beta thing. So we're already that far in the process. If yes or no for VR, it's set to no. It does look like this is a multiplayer type of experience. And then it also included in that data link a MP3 of the audio that plays, when you're on the PlayStation home screen and you're going through your stuff and you pull up a game, you've got some music that kind of plays in the background. It's very much Star Wars. And then of course the name, it's Project Maverick. What that to me screams like, Starfighter.
Top Gun.
It's Top Gun.
It's like, Top Gun in Star Wars.
I mean, because I'm not a game developer, so I don't know how hard it would be to do this. But you take what you've already built in Battlefront with the Starfighter stuff. You take those elements. You've already got the models. You've already got the flight systems and all of that, and then you reskin missions on it like we had in Rogue Squadron, which was the reason why I bought the GameCube in the first place, was to play the Rogue Squadron that came with it.
Yeah, which was also a great game.
It was very good. I'm
very excited for this. It's really funny that we had just really talked about it just recently, and we did mention there's all these EA studios and they have the license, and we haven't heard anything, and it's kind of crazy. So I assume that there's more than just this one game, hopefully, but that I think that hopefully we'll see something soon about it. Maybe this will kind of push them to release some more information, but I don't know why. I guess if it's moving into a beta, I just don't know the timeline as to how early that information gets over to the PlayStation to put it on the PlayStation Network, that kind of thing. Like, I don't know if there was an announcement already imminent, or if this is something that was potentially going to be the end one more thing. By the way, the beta is available later today,
Yeah. And it's one of those things too, James, when you're podcasting and you're doing a show and you're recording something that, takes that is recorded and then edited and then put out onto the internet later, you could possibly be listening to this knowing everything about it that we don't know. So it is possible that, what we're talking about has already been announced, and potentially maybe this leak kind of forced them to spill the beans, I guess. But I'm really hoping that, because the information we know so far that it's multiplayer, I'm hoping that it's not only multiplayer. I'm a casual gamer. I don't have a giant list of friends. Like to be honest, like, I think, James, you're my only friend on like the PlayStation Network I know who actually it shows up, you know,
Right.
that's like they're actually online. And I've got like 2 or 3 people on my Switch, which you're not there yet. So we'll need to do that. But, you know, I want to be able to just play when I want to. And sure, maybe the random matchups are fine. But, you know, I think I'm really hoping that it is more like Rogue Squadron, where it's mission based and I go and I do the thing and, you know, and I move up and try to earn those medals and stuff like that. That was really satisfying, you know, for me, for Rogue Squadron, at least. So that's the news from Star Wars video games. And now moving on to something that is not at all Star Wars related, but it is video game related. And I'm super excited to talk about this. Animal Crossing New Horizons is coming out this month, in just a few days, actually. March 20th is the big day, and I'm planning on picking it up. And it's a little different. There's some changes to the game. If you're someone who played Animal Crossing back in the GameCube days, or maybe you played City Folk on the Wii, there's a lot of stuff that's changed, even considerably since the last iteration of the game, which was New Leaf for the 3DS. James, are you first? Okay, couple of questions I have for you, because I'm excited about this, and sometimes you are, and sometimes you're not, and that's totally fine. Have you played? Like, is this a game that you've played before?
I have never played an Animal Crossing game, but I am planning on giving this one the old college try. I'm pretty excited for it. I'm excited to try it out.
I'm extremely happy about that. First of all, since Animal Crossing is coming out with this new game, I decided to pick up my 3DS XL and play New Leaf, because I was wanting to just kind of scratch that itch, and then also kind of judge, like, do I still enjoy this game? Do I still enjoy the, you know, the kind of, it's the calming. It's really a hard game to describe to people. So it's either you know about what this game is or you don't, because it's a game, but it's not a game, and
it's like a chore simulator.
Somewhat. There's definitely some truth to that. Because I got back into New Leaf, and the first thing that happens, and I'm, you know, talking to these villagers, they're like, "Whoa, Chris, where have you been? It's been forever." And I was like, "God, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't, you know, I hadn't checked the game." And of course I went to the bank, and I had made tons of money on interest. I've shared that before, which was great to pay off, you know, all of my loans and stuff.
Pay off old Tom Nook.
I know.
Give the man his acorns.
His bells.
Oh, bells. My bad.
He craves his bells. And then I was like, man, okay, I want to go to somebody else's town, because when you start the game, your town has like one kind of fruit. But other towns might have different. And then I just was really frustrated, because none of my friends, I guess, haven't played the game in long enough where I'm able to visit their town anymore. And so I was like, God, I wanted some peaches or something. And I wanted to go explore. And so that's why I'm like really focused this time around on like making sure that I've got friends that I can visit their own islands. So Animal Crossing is this game where you basically come to a place, you set up your house, you can expand your house, you can collect all kinds of objects, put them in your house, talk to anthropomorphic characters that live in your area, and then sometimes they're like, "I would really like a butterfly," and you're like, "I've gotcha." So I take my butterfly net and I'll go catch a butterfly, bring it over to the weird dog creature and be like, "Here's your butterfly." And he's like, "Great, here's a balloon furniture as a gift." I'm like, "Sweet." And then of course, if you don't want it, you sell it. And there's a little bit of something for a lot of people. Some people are really into the decorating part of it and all that. I kind of just enjoy it as like, for almost the same reason that people like to go fishing in real life, where it's like, you're just sort of there and hanging out and
being left alone.
Yeah, kind of. And so I enjoy like taking the boat ride to the island and catching bugs and then taking them and selling them for a ton of money. And Animal Crossing has had its limitations. There's been new features and features that disappear. Some improve, some don't. But what's really exciting about New Horizons and some of the things that I wanted to just share. So if you're thinking about picking up Animal Crossing New Horizons on March 20th, some of the new things, like for example, like if you haven't played since the GameCube days, these are some things that are like really brand new that are that are going to be that makes this game, I think, a lot bigger and a lot more of a reason to pick it up. The first thing is you get to actually choose your island. So the configuration of it, that's usually never been. You just got to a randomly generated piece of land, and it's like, here you are, and here's where your house is. In this game, you're able to pick the islands you want. You actually get to pick the hemisphere. So if you are, if you want to be in the southern hemisphere and it be winter during the summertime, you could, if I were to say, like, I'm in the southern hemisphere, I'd be in, the middle of fall right now, because the game is in real time and it reacts to whatever the actual seasons are.
Now, Chris, we need to do some research as to see if it would behoove us for me to make mine in a separate hemisphere than yours.
Yeah, I think you just book a flight on the seaplane.
Well, I'm just saying, no. I'm saying, like, do things happen on my island in the winter that you won't be able to experience yet? So it would behoove us to, you know what I mean? Like me make mine on a separate hemisphere than yours, not because I don't want visitors, but because when you visit, you get a different experience, sir.
That's actually probably a good strategy, because there shouldn't be an issue for me to travel to your place, because it's you book a plane and you just travel to your island. But if we both have different summer and winters, there are certain bugs that only come out in the summer and certain things that only happen in the winter. Our holiday stuff, that's the other thing too. Like if it's on Christmas, stuff happens. On Sundays, stuff happens. On Tuesdays, stuff happens. So it's the game goes on even when you're not playing it. Another cool thing about this new version of the game is you're able to craft items, which this is a brand new thing for this game, where you can cut down trees and then you have wood. You can break apart rocks and get minerals, and then you can take it to a workshop. And if you have the DIY plans for something like a bench or a bed or something, you can put that together instead of having to buy it at the store. So that's another interesting new element to it. Up to 8 friends can actually share the island. So if you don't want to have a bunch of different places to travel to, then you can, like, I could set up an island and James, you could move in and be on that same island if you wanted to. Yeah. So that's another thing that's kind of interesting is you can, if you live on my island, but you're not there, I can ask you for help, and I can be like, hey, go get some wood. And your little dude will go get, chop down a bunch of trees for me. The online app, it actually uses because Switch doesn't really have the built-in chat kind of stuff. You have to use your phone for it. There'll be a bunch of new features that will be added to the Nintendo Online app. So you can, if you have some designs from an old 3DS game, you'll be able to use your phone to scan the barcode and use that kind of stuff. And there's a few other features that I thought were cool. Plus and then you'd use it for chat between people, either voice or texting. A little bit Minecrafty, you can modify the island's landscape. So that means if you want the river to flow in a different direction, you could, break apart the, parts of the land. You can make levels on the land. You can, flatten out a hill if you want, whatever you want to do, basically. If you have the right tools, which in this game also is different because your tools actually will break, which in other games, if you had a shovel, your shovel's good. But if you use your cheap shovel for too long, eventually it's going to break and you're going to need to go to Nook's shop and buy a new shovel.
Or build one. I think that might be why they put that in, right?
I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, here's the thing that I'm most excited about. And this sounds so dumb. Sometimes you'll spend time on your town and you'll put stuff in a certain place and you'll be like, I'm going to put flowers here. I'm going to put some trees here. This is my apple orchard. This is my peach orchard. And then some random person shows up and decides to move onto into your town. And they've just dropped their house right there on top of it. In this game, you're going to be able to, when a new villager or new camper, I guess, comes to your town, you're going to be able to tell them where to set up their camp, and you're gonna be like, no, you put your tent here. Like that's
so they can't mess with your things.
Yeah, so you can say like, I want all of my villagers to live over on this side of the island, because otherwise in the other games their houses are all over the place. So if it's like, if a person's like, hey, will you go tell Claude that I need something? I have to go find where Claude's house is and travel.
You can set up a little favela over there where all their houses are just stacked on top of each other.
Exactly. I can just put them all in a row and just be like, this is where you live on this side of the island. I'm going to be over here.
Closest to the volcano is where you live.
Exactly. I don't know why that makes me excited. There's another little thing too. The more good things you do for people so that you are encouraged to do those chores, like James, you were saying, there's a new thing called Nook Miles. So think of them kind of like frequent flyer miles. The more things you do for people, you're going to get a different set of currency that can only be used for certain, in-game stuff. So it kind of behooves you to go and catch freaking butterflies and pick out new clothes or something for somebody.
Very cool.
So, yeah. And so this is basically me trying to sell you all on Animal Crossing so that you want to be friends with me on the game so that I can go to your place and have a variety of fruit available to me so that my island can have all of the fruits.
Well, let me sweeten the pot a little bit here because James Kelly in his quick little Googling found a little deal through Best Buy right now where if you pre-order Animal Crossing and you sign in using a Best Buy account, like a free account or whatever, if you purchase Animal Crossing through a link that I just put in the show notes and we can provide, obviously, but it gets you $10 in a reward certificate once you pick it up. So $10 off your next Best Buy purchase.
That's perfect.
So there you go.
That you can use for Animal Crossing only. I'm just kidding. It looks like we can use it for Doom Eternal.
Yeah, there's a number of other games on the list as well. But whenever a game is coming out, just a pro tip: if you Google like Best Buy $10 pre-order, it'll take you to a link that shows you all the games that are on that offer right now. So right now it's Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy VII Remake, the Avengers game, and Cyberpunk 2077. So if you pre-order any of those and pick them up through Best Buy, you get $10 on your next Best Buy purchase.
Nice. Well, I will definitely. So I've posted a few times on Twitter, but on our I'm sure on there, I'll put them on everywhere. I'll say like, if you want to like add me, and I'll provide you my information so you can add me as a friend on the Switch so we can play, all together and have a sweet island camping getaway. James plays.
Party time.
It's a jingle. Woo-hoo.
Dancing, playing games.
How was that? Was that a good enough jingle? Like,
yeah, it was a great jingle. I understand that there's a bit of I totally understand the lack of a highly produced jingle.
What do you mean?
What do I mean, Chris?
I spent 8 hours on that.
Oh, very nice. Well, we're very proud of you. So this one's going to be a little bit of a pretty quick one, I think. And the game that I played most recently and played through and enjoyed playing was Captain Skyhawk on the NES. Now, this is an NES game that, in my opinion, and granted, I do look at this game with the biggest pair of nostalgia goggles on the planet because it was one of my favorite games as a child. I think it is one of the most criminally underrated NES games ever, especially because it's like a $3 game. I think anyone who owns an NES should own this game. It was made by a little developer at the time, but became very popular on the N64. Rare is the developer of this game. And it was published by a little company that is out of the games industry now by the name of Milton Bradley.
Oh my goodness.
So, quite the cavalcade. But what this game is it's a really cool, I guess you would call it a vertical scrolling shooter, for half of it. And then the other half is like a arcade kind of dogfight simulator where, have you ever played Space Harrier by chance?
No, I haven't. Okay.
Well, anywho,
I'll Google it while you're talking about it.
No, essentially, your plane's right in front of you, and you can fly, up, down, like Star Fox.
Okay, thank you.
Like Star Fox, but no obstacles, just enemies that you have to shoot down. So every other level is like that, and the other levels are vertical shooters. But what's really cool about this game is it's not just a vertical shooter in that you can move left and right. You can also change your altitude, which is not very common for vertical shooters. So there's terrain, I guess you could say it's quote unquote polygonal terrain. It's not really, but it's fake. But
flat sprites moving towards the screen.
Exactly. But you can move up and down and left and right during the side scrolling pieces. And so you can like run into terrain. But each one of those missions is also a little bit different. The first one is just pretty much going through and getting to the end. Whereas the second one of those, there's little holes, little squares with arrows pointing to them that you have to drop bombs in. And essentially you keep repeating. It's a loop that you go on, and then you have to drop all of the bombs in the specific spots. It's very cool. A lot of fun. There's another mission where you're flying and there's just another jet, like kind of an enemy, I guess like an ace pilot who's following you that you have to kind of maneuver around and not get shot down by while you're also trying to get to the end of the run. But yeah, it's a really cool game. A lot of fun. I think it's interesting that it's a Rare developed game because they went on to make like Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, a lot of huge titles. Perfect Dark, yes. Yeah. GoldenEye. And then what's the one I'm thinking of? On
Conquer
GameCube. I believe they made the Star Fox Adventure game on GameCube.
Okay,
if you ever played that. But yeah, it's a great game. It's a ton of fun and it's super cheap. I think if you own an NES, you owe it to yourself to own this game.
This is probably not available yet on it's not one of the Switch NES games that you can.
Do not believe it is one of the Switch NES. You know what? That's a good point. I should pick one of those for next time so that all the people can play.
Yeah, we
should do that.
But you know still, what? like you said,
this is an ever-growing segment, Chris.
It's brand new. James plays. And it's funny because like there are so many, especially in the NES age, there are so many games that I never played because of the fact that I was small and I didn't know what games were even out there. And you had to rely on either your friends telling you about a game, or if you were lucky to, have a Nintendo Power magazine and that magazine actually tell you about the game. There's so many things out there that's sort of like, well, where do you start and what's something that's even worth your time tracking down, especially like if this game is not available on the Virtual Console or available in the Switch NES offerings. Mm-hmm. If you were to come across this on eBay or at a thrift shop and not know just by looking at the thing, I mean, I guess you could pull out your cell phone and, Google about the game. But, I think it's pretty valuable. I think it's a neat way of discovering new stuff. And James, you having such a large collection of retro games, like that's awesome to be able to share with everybody.
And just as an aside for this game to tell you how good it is, my father and stepmother do not play video games at all. However, when they purchased this game for my brother and I for Christmas, it was already open when we opened it because they played it all night the previous night and couldn't put it down.
That's high praise.
So it's very high praise. In fact, my father, whenever he comes over to visit me at my house, sometimes asks to see the cartridge of Captain Skyhawk just so he can get a little hint of that the ecstasy of which he experienced while playing this game in the early 90s.
Take out the officials counting.
This is a feature presentation.
And now, on with the show.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
You're ready to move out.
All right, so we are joined by Jay and Josh from the Superhero Suite podcast on the Retro Zap Network, and it's a perfect week to have you guys on, specifically about, we've got a lot of Batman stuff going on. We've had Matt Reeves has shown us the cowl and some really dark and shadowy looks at this new costume, and then we just got some looks at the brand new Batmobile. You guys are my comic book experts. I'm a fan of Batman, and I love everything about it, but I'm definitely not as well versed when it comes to all the different iterations and the comic book stuff. And when recently listening to y'all's your podcast in a recent episode, y'all were talking about Batman, so I was like, gotta get you guys on. You are the geek experts. First and foremost, guys, how are you guys doing? Because it feels like it's been a really long time since we've had a chance to talk.
It's great. Yeah, I'm glad we got a chance to catch up here.
Yeah, and we're excited for everything coming up, and it's great to talk to you again, Chris. And I think you might know some stuff about Batman, but I think what you wanted to have us on was to talk about the Batman, right?
The Batman, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And this is the Batmobile. I'm assuming, not just Batmobile. I don't know how that works exactly, but that's what I'm looking at.
It's all the whatever. It's the Batmobile. It's the cape. It's the cowl.
Right. It's not just a Batman. So
yeah. So we just got a really good look and a much better look, I think, than Matt's original reveal of the costume, because that was really dark and shadowy. We got 3 really good looks at this new ride that Batman has. Jay, just first glance look at this thing. What's your reaction to this thing?
The Bat and the Furious. That is what I see. I see a modified like Camaro or Mustang or something like that. It doesn't scream Batmobile to me. It along with the costume and the motorcycle and now the Batmobile. It looks like it's more, what does this guy have access to? He's not like super rich to have, amazing things made. He just is customizing, the off the shelf stuff that he has.
Right.
Which it could be interesting. I'm finding as I'm getting older, I'm more particular about my Batman, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's because there's so much to digest. I'm kind of with you, and I have no idea, what direction they're planning on going with this. But to me, I feel like what you could do, based on what we've seen so far, how you said, Jay, it's kind of like stuff he's just modified, is that by the end of the movie, maybe it becomes a little bit more stylized for him, and it evolves throughout the story of where they're going here. It does resemble some of the different iterations of the Batmobile over the years. Some of them have been much more batty, and some of them have been more, I don't know, tank-like, dune buggy-like. I mean, there's been so many different shapes of the Batmobile. I guess this one reminded me most of, like, I don't know, maybe the 1966 Batman.
It's kind of that. Right? It's also a little bit of the. It's like a Green Hornet.
Mashup
with it as well from the 1960s Green Hornet with what's his face and Bruce Lee.
Yeah,
with the Green Hornet, that one. I was getting definitely. I was. It's funny, Jay, that you mentioned the Fast and the Furious kind of reference, because James and I both were thinking the same thing. Like, we're going to show back up at the Batcave, which is just his garage, and we got Vin Diesel working on an upgrade or something like that. Like, there's definitely something to it. I was thinking about, like, what is it that makes a Batmobile, and when I was kind of going down that list, I kind of feel like while this one definitely is much different, it's not the Tumbler, it's not the one from the recent Justice League stuff. It's definitely more grounded, which goes along with what we've seen in the costume, which looks handmade, and all that. But on my list of things, it's like, okay, you've got to have kind of a dark bat-ish shape. Like, there's got to be those, the pointy ears, kind of have the fins, right? And then you have to have that rocket engine on the back. And I was like, okay, check and check. And then the other thing I was thinking was, do I want this as a Hot Wheel? And I do. So,
okay.
But I hear you, Jay.
Gadgets, for me, it's the gadgets. It's kind of James Bond-esque, but
definitely that vibe.
Different. Yeah, it just doesn't. I guess the rear end. I see. I see what you're talking about with the jet engine. The rear end just doesn't flare up enough on the over the brake lights. It kind of tapers out back, as in there's a nice line going from the door over to the brake light as like a swoop but
Right.
I want altitude on it, and I know he can't drive under trucks, with anything like that. So,
Absolutely. I was just curious. There's been so many different iterations in comics and both, television and the animated series and movies. But starting with Josh, do you have a favorite? Is there a favorite Batmobile, or do you have a couple favorites?
Boy, that's always a hard question for me because
kind of like rating your Star Wars films. It's
well, it is. I mean, and for me, it's the Batmobile design kind of matches the feel of that particular version of Batman, right? I mean, the 66 Batman TV show matched his car for sure. Then, Michael Keaton's Batman fit that. And so, kind of what I've been in the mood for, but I've never been a big fan of the Tumbler, just because I didn't think it felt enough like a car to me. It kind of depends on what I'm in the mood for, but I do like the ones that look more batty. So one of the ones that's kind of like, I don't know, you'd say this is very campy, but the one that had the actual bat head on the front and the big high tail in the back.
I actually have that as a diecast model that I built as a kid.
That's a good one. That's a good.
It's
model.
probably Are you talking about from the comics or from one of the movies?
Yeah, I think like the Killing Joke. I think he had it during that.
Yeah, that was like the 1940s style.
Yeah,
one I think.
When talking about the Tumbler is because I'm sensing kind of a theme, because Jay, you're kind of like, okay, this car is a little bit too off the shelf, and then Josh, with the Tumbler, this is the same thing that kind of felt too, was that the Tumbler wasn't made for Batman. Like it was something that was like, well, we got this thing, does it come in black?
It's black, and I can, I don't know, maybe,
it's not so bespoke. Yeah. Like there's been a thing because my personal favorite Batmobiles are the Keaton Batmobile. And then for whatever reason, movie wise, I really like Batman Forever's Batmobile with all the weird that spinny thing in the front and then how the fin opens up. I've always had an affinity for that.
Is that
Jay,
is that the one that went up the side of the building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, that's okay. It's okay.
It's the Joel Schumacher one. It has the nipples on the side. It's all of that.
Jay, do you have a favorite Batmobile?
I probably have to say the 66 one. Just it's so iconic in my head. That's the one I grew up with. As far as like film and TV versions, I'm actually looking at a picture of me sitting in a replica of it with my kids here. That visited my town. I don't know, like a decade ago or something like that. But it's dark. It's got the wing, the motif of the bottom of the bat logo with the points. The red piping on it is just really nice, and it's got the gadgets, very 60s style, buttons and levers and
labels
TV
on everything.
But yeah,
that's a good
fun.
one. That's a really good one. I'm interested to see, Josh, earlier you said something that kind of got my kind of imagination going, that it was sort of like we're seeing a bunch of stuff early. Now, the reveals for the suit and the Batmobile have kind of been part of the marketing machine for any of these films. They did that with, Ben Affleck with his Batman costume, and the same thing with his Batmobile. Those are images that we got to see, well in advance.
Symbols that represented the character.
Right. But then you said something that kind of made me think, okay, so we have this early look at the suit and the Batmobile, and we've seen some paparazzi style shots of what I assume is the Bat cycle or whatever. And everything looks very made by hand, and potentially maybe even made by Bruce himself, that maybe over time that we're seeing the stuff that happens more, potentially like earlier in the film, that we get a chance to see, now that once he kind of becomes Batman and the Batman, that he gets, that kind of suit upgrade, third act of the film, and the Batmobile is a, souped up, more familiar Batman. I kind of think that would be a really cool thing to see.
Like an origin.
Yeah, because we've never had a Batman origin film.
That would be unique.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like, is it a Batman film if we don't have at some point a flashback to the Waynes getting shot down, in the.
I think Josh and I had talked about this at one point on one of our shows, and a flashback is okay, but we don't need to start with, them coming, them going to the theater and deciding that they need to go because Bruce is scared. That whole thing. It's.
But we could see the beginnings of him becoming, learning how to be Batman, learning the ropes and how to, so this car is just a car and maybe it gets shot up. And it's like, well, how can I improve that? I'll, armor it up a little bit, or I'll put this aspect of it. And the suit, we've seen those scenes of him on the bike. He has no cape. It could be inserted digitally.
CG.
It could be. Yeah, or maybe he learns a legitimate reason that might be a good tool to have it as a cape, right?
Darling.
Or no cape. Or maybe he's like, no, I don't wear the cape on the bat cycle because it can get all caught up in the wheel.
That could be, right?
Right. And maybe he'll drop some marbles and then there's a flashback to the pearls bouncing on the floor and he has curls
he touches
up.
He sees the flash of the gun that kills his family, and then he touches his chest to the potential if the rumor is correct about the bat symbol being the gun.
It looks like it.
It does. It really does.
Well, whatever. If that is the thing, the evolution of kind of how he does that, I won't be satisfied unless it ends with him wearing a pink Batman suit, a rainbow Batman suit, the zebra Batman suit. I mean, this is what I want to see. If they're gonna evolve the costume, let's just go all the way.
It's just the 90s Kenner action figure line, basically. Just run. It's like, well, we can't. How many action figures can we make? Well, Batman only has one costume, so let's put out one with bright neon and call it toxic sludge Batman. And then there's the night vision one. I had all of those. I still have them in a big bucket.
Geek.
Guilty. Yeah. I really enjoyed last I'm not sure if it's because we're recording this and it's going to come out, and I'm sure you'll have a new episode since then. But at the end of February, y'all had a much more in-depth conversation about Batman and the costume reveal and all of that. So I really recommend folks going to check that out. I want to give you guys an opportunity. This is a brand new show that you guys are doing on the Retro Zap Network now that Green Arrow is wrapped up, and is this new opportunity to really expand the scope of the show. You're getting to talk about a bunch of different things, and I think that's really exciting. So, Jay or Josh, you want to tell everybody in the Geek State, what the show's about and what to look forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. The show is new. You're right. We just started, but Josh and I have been podcasting for about 8 years now, 7 or 8 years. So it's not new like you would normally have new shows. It's just a new show for us.
Right.
And I think some of the things that we struggle with on our existing shows and with Arrow, which just ended, or with our Green Justice podcast, was that people had to watch a TV show to be able to listen to our podcast. And it's great. We have good listenership, and we have people that love listening to us and follow us on all of our shows and everything like that. But we don't have as many people as we could, because not everybody watches the CW TV shows or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So when Arrow was ending, we were talking about, hey, we should do something that's a little more general, kind of like what you guys are doing, but ours is really specialized to superheroes. So superhero movies, comics, books, television shows, video games, anything in pop culture having to do with superheroes. And I don't know, you can ask Josh, but I think our definition of superhero might, fluctuate over time. Like, is Han Solo really a superhero? I don't know, but
it's very flexible. We discuss these things. Yeah. So
well, it's in the same way that like a Tony Stark, he doesn't have any superpowers per se. But the things he does are heroic, and he uses the resources that he has. So sure. I can see getting into that argument too about, is Chewbacca, is he a superhero? He's got the strength.
More, yeah, I would say it's more along the lines. I think primarily our criteria is, it had to kind of be a comic book.
Gotcha.
Superhero. Our previous episode, the one I think you were talking about with the Batman discussion on as well, we did celebration of the 30th anniversary of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
So, you know, they're superheroes. They're
heroes in a half shell.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They fight with you know, training, right? They don't have superpowers, though. They're mutated giant turtles. But, you know, started in a comic book, there's, you know, they are big in pop culture, right? Everybody, even if you don't see the movies or the cartoons or read the comics, like, you know who these characters are. And that, I think, is what we try to address. We try to address these, you know, just the things that people know, like, everybody knows about Superman, so you don't have to do an origin next time. You know, just Superman. Let's just do it.
And I've enjoyed listening to when y'all reference certain comic books, like in the Batman episode you were talking about. I think it was issue 1000, the Kevin
for
Smith.
Detective.
Detective Comics one. And I was like, you know, because I don't have enough time. Like, there's so many comic books that are out there, and so many different things like this that I can't stay on top of that. And so it's cool to be able to listen to a show too that says, you know, here's what's going on in the movies, but here's a connection potentially to this issue. And so that's kind of, it sparked my interest because I was like, okay, let me get into, you know, the app and let's check this out. You know, I'm just,
well, and here's what I would recommend. And this is one of the reasons Jay and I, kind of really wanted to do this, is because you don't have to be an expert in comic books to listen to this show. We're going to talk about comic books, but sometimes we'll talk about things that are coming up. Sometimes we'll talk about comics of the distant past or the history of a character. Or I know people have asked us if we want to get into comics, but we really don't know where to start because there's so many. Where do we start? You know, we'll have discussions of that. What would we recommend? And, you know, what might be connected to movies or TV and would be kind of fun to supplement your viewing with, right? And that's why this really is for anybody that likes the genre of superheroes and comic characters. And that's why it's such a broad definition for us. And it's really the kind of stuff we just get together and talk about anyway, and we're just sort of giving
might as well record it, you know.
Yeah, we might as well record it, but we're giving like a structure to it and an idea of letting people know that they can really jump in anywhere with this stuff. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a lifelong dedicated person that is so deep into this that you know every tiny little bit of the minutia of the minutia, whatever it is you're starting. So that's why we talk about so many things.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think the other thing that I definitely wanted to introduce into the show was just that heroic aspect that I think people should have in their own lives. That our tagline is "Welcome to the Superhero Suite," where everyone's a hero, and you know the fact that, you know, we elevate these myths of the superhero and these shows and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, this is cool. It'd be awesome to do that. People do amazing things in their own life every day. Things that, you know, other people might feel is heroic, and someone else might look at it and say, well, you know, this is just my life. This is what I do. But, you know, we've got people serving in the military and police, you know, that put their lives on the line, medical workers and things like that. But also just, you know, random people who decide to do things to make other people's lives more enjoyable or, you know, make the quality of life better for somebody. So we try to highlight those things and remind people that, you know, there are heroes living among us here, even though they don't necessarily have superpowers. They may be billionaires that, you know, have a lot of tech and stuff like that, you know. So.
True. And that's one thing that I do enjoy about the show, going back to what Josh was saying too, about the ease of access and not having to have watched, because like when I was listening to, still listening to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., now that we're waiting for another season, I'm caught up, but I would fall behind episodes of watching the show. So I'd have to kind of queue those up and wait to watch the show and then be able to listen to the thing. And I also really enjoy the fact that, like Josh said, you sometimes don't know where to start, and so it's a great way to learn about a bunch of stuff in a way that where you don't feel like you're left out of the conversation, but also knowing that y'all know a whole lot about the topic, that you are going to go deeper into things and you are going to talk about in-depth type of stuff, but it's also going to be easy to access if you're brand new to comics or you're just kind of a casual fan, someone who picks up, and reads, a few issues or follows a certain storyline.
Yeah. And we're trying to do that. We're trying to give people recommendations as like, what's a good in? Somebody may have heard about something that isn't there an Infinity War comic book or something like that? So we'll provide information about that. Try to tell people about some of the current comics that are out there, because if there's some movie or TV show you're following, you can probably walk into a comic store and find an actual single issue with that character. Right. And definitely a trade paperback. So it's, comic stores are nothing to be scared of. If you want, you just start on Amazon and kind of browse there if you want.
Well, and now with the iPad and Comixology, and you can get the DC Universe stuff and the Marvel Unlimited, the ease of access to get into the stuff is so much easier, especially if you live in a smaller town like I do, where there isn't really a dedicated comic book store. I think that's kind of a cool place.
Sad.
Yeah, we've got a store and they have comics, but it's not the same vibe. I miss the actual local comic book store vibe. I want to, first of all, just thank you guys for coming on the show, but I also want to make sure that everybody has a chance to subscribe to the show and leave you guys some really good feedback on all the different platforms where you can do that. So where can we find Superhero Suite?
Primarily, you can find us at retrozap.com. If you just go there and look under the podcast section, Superhero Suite, along with Scarlet Velocity, a Flash podcast, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. case files will be available. You can find us on Twitter at superhero_suite. And we're also on Instagram at just Superhero Suite. That's SUITE.
And one final question to both of you. If you had a superpower, what would it be? What about, we'll start with Josh.
Ooh, boy. I've thought about this many times in my life, as I'm sure we all have. And I think I've narrowed it down to speed. I think that would be the most valuable in my life,
It always starts off as invisibility or flight as a kid, and then you grow up and you're like, gosh, I wish I could get things done faster.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
What about you, Jay?
I think I've told Josh this. I actually do have a superpower. I can actually choose the longest line at the grocery store.
I'm not sure that's...
It's not the greatest. I mean, I'm like a Legion of Substitute Heroes sort of superpower.
Yeah. We're starting a club, so
I feel like I have that too, but it's the concession line at the movie theater.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey guys, I appreciate y'all being on the show this week, and y'all can come back anytime you want, especially when big superhero news drops. We'd love to have you back.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, sir.
Let's look around the region and take our pick of the week.
Shut up and take my money.
Each week, we like to pick something that either we recommend, or sometimes, very rarely, there's something that we're like, we tried this, stay away. But we call it our pick of the week. And I'm feeling, it feels good. I was thinking about going first, but James, I'm thinking, I think you should go first.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris. And I have a a lot of times I say I have something different for my pick of the week. And I will say for sure this time I have something very different. I've had the day off of work today because I had some individuals come to the house to help me with an install. In a moment of hubris and a great deal on Best Buy, one of those deals where they don't even show you the price until you put it in your cart. I picked up 2 TVs because I need to be able to watch my football and play video games. That's why I haven't been able to play through this backlog. So I purchased a couple TVs, but I wanted to get these TVs mounted, hidden wires. This is kind of the setup that I've wanted for a very long time. Mounted hidden wires, sound bar underneath the TVs, no wires, all that. And called some individuals, Audio Visual Up in the DFW area, and they did an incredible job, I will say. So I have to give them a shout out for my pick of the week. Audio Visual Up in the DFW area. If you have any home theater needs, they're very good. They did a lot of consulting, I guess, consulting Would you consider that? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Whatever. I can't speak English.
They gave you their advice on how to best do it.
On how to best do it, and we, it was just a very seamless journey to a wire-free experience now.
So is one TV dedicated, like this is for television and this is video games, or do you have the ability to kind of split how your input set up?
Well, obviously through the TV, I use the apps. Well, both TVs are smart TVs, so they both have the app for the TV. Okay. So either TV can be TV. And then what I had them do is I just had them drop all 4 HDMI cords for both TVs so that they're just there. They're not plugged into anything right now because I haven't done that yet. But essentially I can just plug them into whatever. And then they'll, back to what it was. And I'll probably have a couple spares that, nice. For when the PS5 comes out. Because I want to run that directly to it. I don't want to run that through a splitter because I want the best quality.
You don't need latency or anything.
No latency. I want to make sure that I get my full HDR experience.
Sure.
While having the Dallas,
you're gonna have the Renegade game up on the screen.
Game on the other screen.
Yeah, I think we need to see what is it once you get this all set up and everything's running. I want to see a picture of this so we can share with people because this is a dream setup for a lot of people.
We can definitely do that.
Rad. My pick of the week is so I've mentioned it before, but they keep adding some really cool features, and it's a website called Podchaser. And if you've not heard about it, essentially the best way I can describe it is it's like IMDb for podcasts, but it's a lot more than that. It lets you curate your own lists of things. You can rate and review individual podcast episodes in addition to rating like the full shows. You can follow your favorite creators. But some interesting new things that I've recently discovered they did is, say you've got a bunch of podcasts that you like to follow and you want to be able to just, be at work and you want to listen to those podcasts one by one. And I don't know, I'm thinking this is a feature that's already out there or it's something that's coming soon. You're able to bookmark these these are the podcasts I want to listen to. I'm not listening to them right now, but I want to bookmark them. And then for you to have your own unique RSS feed that you can subscribe to on your whatever device that you use to listen to podcasts on. And you can subscribe to your own podcast feed that will give you all of your episodes that you bookmarked, basically creating your own podcast network of shows that are just for you to enjoy. So they play, one after another, as opposed to having to, when the show's over, go back to your phone and pick the next episode, because what a hassle.
Thank God for this service.
I know. Well, and just as a shout out, because the Geek Hangout podcast added us to their geek and entertainment news list. So in return, I added them to mine. But it's a cool way for people to discover. So if you've got shows that you like, you can put together, your top 8, very MySpace-like, but you can also create lists of all these different things. And if you're someone who loves podcasts as much as I do, and I'm sure if you're listening to the show, you love podcasts as well, it's a great way to find new shows and discover new content. So I think it's pretty cool. Well, that about does it here. I just want to remind everybody to join us over on our social media networks. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and to follow us. Click the share button, share the show with your friends. That's how we grow this amazing Geek State podcast audience. And it all starts with one, little retweet. Who knows? So from all of us here at the Geek State, stay excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.
It's the flight of your life, Captain Skyhawk for your Nintendo. The only air combat game with a spy satellite view of the action. More weapons, more missions over more terrain than any other flying ace. Captain Skyhawk for your Nintendo.
James, that XFL game was a game, and it happened.
It was a game, and it was against New York, Chris.
How about that? How about those scores that they got?
There were points scored by one or both teams.
Do you think people will realize we recorded this before the game happened?
There's no way that's possible.
There's absolutely no way.